The irony is, yellow fever struck in about 64 and wiped out a significant of the local population, chased a lot of people out, because this is when the tourist industry started, by the way. Royal Victoria Hotel built a whole gamut of it. Another thing that happened was, there was a mini tsunami in 65 that arguably was the worst we've ever seen. It was, the water was so high, I read in one of the reports, that it almost covered the hill where Fort Charlotte is. That's how high the water went. So a lot of the wealth that was accumulated by these people got washed away. And shortly after 65, the Bahamas had plunged back into virtual poverty. The problem was, now you got a large population of unemployed people. And what does that breed? Prostitution, larceny, you just name it, every vice and every crime. Jump forward. Prohibition, another interesting time. This was called the Great Experiment. I smile when I studied this some time back. Because when the Pilgrim Fathers came over, 40% of, now these are Puritans, 40% of all the cargo they had on it was alcoholic beverage. 40%. George Washington, the father of the nation, had one of the largest gin distilleries in the country at Mount Vernon, which wasn't his, but it was his wife's home anyway. He had it in her backyard. So, several things were happening then. The Volstead Act came into, and they decided no one is to sell or drink alcohol in the United States. Boy, that's like, if you bring a law like that here, you might as well tell me to speak. Okay, because I don't know how you're going to even consider anything that. But they tried to, obviously, it didn't work. This is during the same period when the women's suffrage movement is peaking. And you see what the sign said? Lips that touch alcohol shall not touch ours. Now, of course, that only because trust. There was so much money spread around. Plenty lips will touch and plenty lips will leave. You get some of that. Ton of that. Nassau now. Here is what happens in these islands. You literally had gangsters here on the streets of Nassau walking up and down. I read the records, you could see the bulge that they had, that these guys were armed to the teeth. The problem was, while these gangsters with the names of Muggsy and Lefty and Claw Hand and Patch Eye, and some of the colorful names that they had, while they're walking up and down the street, when there is no business, they idle. So what do? Our poor cops can't see very clearly because these images came up dark. They ain't got no gun. All they got is what we call a little billy in their hand. And so they would walk along Bay Street and they would see one of them on their beat. And they'd take their gun or whatever they got in their hand, just come up in the back of them, right in the back of their head. What could they do? And then on Saturday nights, there was a hotel, the Lucerne, I think it was called, that was on Frederick Street. And when they tried to have the church services, these guys still throwing out there. They still singing. There was one time when it got so bad, in the gardens of the hotel, fellas decided to have a party. And shameful to say, they lit a bonfire. And they invited the local girls from over the hill to come and dance with them. And the local girls came and danced for them to get whatever money they could. The shame is the local girls dance naked. Bay Street was bustling. You had more traffic on Bay Street than you could shake a stick at. There were complaints in the paper that too much cars on Bay Street, people can get knocked down. Literally. There were actually complaints about it because there was so much wealth. Everybody was getting a piece of this pie. Most people were working at stevedores or whatever, or smuggling, however, they were making money. The problem is this. Over the hill, you had the people living like this. This is wash day in Grantstown during that same time. Clothes on. Some of you older ones, I'm sure, like me, would remember when clothes used to hang on the fence. Anyway, but this clothes on the fence. Poverty was rank. See you? Shoes? People didn't even spell shoes. No, they didn't wear shoes. Poverty was very rare. And so it got to the point where Bahamians started to want something different. And one of the relatives would call and say, listen man, why don't you come to Miami? So we started to go to Florida. I'm going to pause a minute just to talk about this, just 2 more minutes. Bahamians played a very significant role in the development of South Florida. Very significant. From the Keys straight up. When Henry Flagel was building his railroad, he used Bahamians. And Tuttle and all the rest of those guys who were doing what they were doing, Brickell and them, they used Bahamians. Bahamians actually played a significant role in South Florida in the civil rights movement. Because when the UNIA, the United Negro UNI, Improvement Association, I'm trying to remember how the acronym is, Marcus Garvey was established. 70% of all members were people of Bahamian descent. And they agitated for change in Florida. They agitated for a change in the Jim Crow laws. And believe me, they caught hell when they agitated. Because many of these people had to run back home. See, one thing with a lot of these Bahamians, when they went over there, they were used to walking on the same sidewalk with white people. Sorry, here. When they went over there, they thought they could do the same thing. You can't do that in the Deep South. Taboo. But they thought they could change things. And so a lot of them got chased home. A lot of them literally got whipped. But we know that change came. Now, as time progressed, and then you had the 1943, and you had the so-called contract, like we call it, you had the United States back home. So that by the 1970s, you had your McDonald's, your Burger King, your Kentucky. When Kentucky came, people went crazy. But I remember my mom came back in this might have been about maybe 1971, 1972. And she was telling us kids that there is a sandwich that Burger King has that's so big you can hold it with 2 hands like that. Now, of course, when she was saying with her hands were kind of that wide, right? You know? And we were saying, really, right, you know? I mean, please. But then once she came back and she brought, and listen, I'm going to put my hand in a little bit more now, you know, to be, I think, realistic. The burger was big as that. Big as we'd ever seen. Marvelous things were coming out of that United States. And with it was the dungarees, the fruit of the loam briefs. Hey, things were changing. And then we had independence. And ladies and gentlemen, that's just a capsule. There's a lot more I can say. But that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your attention. Oh, I just wanted to point out, and I need to thank